This is Johnny with TIgerbomb MMA, and today I'm going over UFC Fight Night. What is it? Paris? Moicano versus St Denis, giving you my thoughts and predictions on the entire 14-bout card. It's a pretty good card. I think there's some decent value on a couple underdogs. I think also there's a lot of value on some of these overpriced guys, like talking about you, Charriere. But I'll give you my quick thoughts on these. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I'm still exhausted from UFC Noche, where, man, I don't know how y'all did financially, but let's just say I'm really, really happy I was in Vegas at the time to make my money back. But I got absolutely diddied that night. Yeah, you would think that the Mexican fighters would show some Mexican spirit. Me and Jose, buddy that went with me, used to do the show with me. We actually recorded something on the way back because we drove from LA to Vegas, but unfortunately my phone ran out of storage, so I didn't save it. But man, I went in on Zheleznyakova like a motherfucker. But I'll give you my quick thoughts on these. First fight of the night. Let's see, we've got I can never pronounce his first name, the African fella here. Bojangles? Balaji Oki versus Chris Duncan. So currently the odds have it in favor of the Zulu Warrior. Here he's minus 220. Come back on Duncan, he's plus 180. And if I'm being honest, man, as much as I crap on Duncan, I think he might be live here. Am I going to pick him? Absolutely not. I'm actually going to pick Oki to win by knockout. The thing about Duncan, he's a big boy. I mean, they're stated that they're about the same height, 5'10", but Duncan, he's fully immersed himself in becoming just a pretty basic grinder in a way. Not to say that's exactly what he's going to become moving forward, but he is more than capable of just kind of grinding you out against the cage. He does land some good shots when he doesn't feel any danger, but in this particular spot against Oki, a pretty solid knockout artist, a good guy with good boxing, good striking, he's going to be wary of getting knocked out. So I do see Duncan trying to implement the clinch a bit more, but Oki has shown a pretty decent, well-rounded game despite being only 9-1. So I do expect there to be some resistance from Duncan early, where he might even land some good shots, but I think Oki's chin is going to be better. I think Oki eventually catches him, rocks him, and finishes him. If Duncan survives this, and props on him, but I do see Oki knocking him out. But because Oki is still a bit unproven to me, in the sense that he did kind of give up takedowns and positions to Twilight Timmy, which is a bad sign. That was a short notice bout. I want to see more from these guys before I go all in on them. So for me, I'll go Oki second round knockout, and then go from there. Next bout, we've got Nora Cornolle versus Jacqueline Cavalcante. And the odds have it in favor of Cavalcante, who is minus 195. Comeback on Cornolle is plus 160. And I'm actually going to go with the dog on this one, for the reason being that a very short, very brief description. The joke reason, Cornolle just doesn't seem to lose in the hometown. Last time she fought in France, she was not going to lose that one. I thought she lost that fight against Jocelyn Edwards, and she still ended up winning that decision. And it's more so because of her style. Let me be frank, when it comes to judging, if, say, I want to screw over a fighter who is clearly winning the fight, I can always fall back on, well, I think the fighter that I gave it to did more damage. And that is what she's pretty good at. She's good at inflicting damage. She's not good off of her back, but she finds a way to really muscle her way back up to her feet. So there's props there. Being that it's going to be primarily a striking matchup, where I do think Cavalcante is the cleaner of the two strikers, maybe she lands better volume, I think Cornolle has more impact. And it being a women's bout, seeing that Cavalcante does tend to fight a bit closer. Last fight should not have been a split decision with Nunes, being that it was a split. Seeing that Cornolle can maybe land some clinch knees, some elbows. She's got good Muay Thai. I can see her edging out this decision, so I'm going to go with Cornolle by a decision. Might actually put some money on her at plus 160. But that's my reasoning behind that. I just think it should be a much closer line fight. I think the success of Cavalcante recently, winning these decisions, is really putting her on this weird territory where they want her to win. Bookies think she's going to win, but Cornolle's been kind of upsetting that apple cart in a bit. Or I guess she's French, so the baguette cart. So I'll go with Cornolle to get an upset here. Next bout, Daniel Barez versus Victor Altamirano. And I remember being that Barez was like minus 145, and now he's maybe minus 105, maybe even plus 105. Altamirano minus 115. I'm going with Perez. And the reason for it, and I think the reason why it's a closer line matchup, like Perez is 35. I mean, Altamirano is also up there. He's 33 for flyweight. But when it comes to the skill sets, I think Perez is more capable of getting a finish than Altamirano. Altamirano, he's a good fighter, right? He's a good flyweight, but despite him only being in the UFC for a short amount of time, it almost seems like his better years have gone past him, and he's the absolute finished product. And what I'm seeing from him is just not up to snuff for being UFC caliber. He can wrestle, he can grapple, black belt in jiu-jitsu. Barez is a brown belt, but Barez, I think, has better striking, better boxing. He's a brown belt, as I mentioned. He's actually fought UFC caliber competition himself well, they both did, but in what's his name? Carlos Hernandez. I thought Barez beat Hernandez, but it is what it is. I think Barez kind of pulled a stunt in that first fight where he absolutely beat the crap out of Pastor early, which is Rafael Filho, my bad. And I think with the jitters, I'm gonna have to excuse it for that first time because he put a pretty bad beating on him, but then he had the unfortunate, symptom of fighting Filho, who was at a certain point stopped taking those punches and started bringing it back to him, and then Barez kind of had like a bit of an adrenaline dump, is what I'm guessing. So I'm gonna chalk it up to that, but I'm gonna go with Barez to get a decision here. I think he's gonna land the better strikes, the better body shots. He has nasty rips to the body, good kicks. He just needs to pace himself, and I think he can win this, especially if he's a dog. I might actually place a small bet on him. But Altamirano, to me, I don't think he's got a whole ton of finishing upside. I think if anything, he can probably steal a decision. But again, if it's going to be damage versus just holding a guy, we've seen Altamirano lose a fight like that before in his last fight against Santos. So I'm going to go with Barez to win this one by a decision. Just kind of pace himself, land the shots. If the finish does come there, great. But Altamirano's always been a bit durable. He's got that patented Mexican chin. Next bout, we've got the ladies. We've got Ailin Perez, that big booty power of Ailin Perez versus Daria Zheleznyakova, the Iron Lady. Now, Kova here, as I'll call her, she's plus 220. Perez minus 270. So you might be thinking, why the hell is Perez minus 270 here against a much taller girl, 5'9", compared to the 5'5" of Perez, which she's training out of MMA Factory. She's a good striker, but from the very beginning, she's a dangerous striker, but absolute trash takedown defense. She can't get up from the bottom. Perez is rounding out her game. We've seen her go from being just this sloppy ground and pound kind of artist where she does go for takedowns, but now actually averaging a pretty high takedown clip. I think she is averaging, I believe, 6. Let me make sure if I check that correctly. Average takedowns, yeah, about five takedowns average, and she gets them. She gets on top with that big booty. Zheleznyakova is not going to get back up. The only issue is that it is a women's MMA bout. Zheleznyakova, she does have good striking, but she did lose to Mullins, which what was her name, Melissa Dixon, in the past, where she beat the crap out of Melissa Dixon, and then she kind of tired herself out, and then when she got taken to the ground, she just had nothing. So I do think that Perez will use her veteran techniques. I think despite them having very similar records, 10-2 for Perez, 9-1 for Zheleznyakova, I think that the veteran here is Perez. I think she's fought the much better competition as of late. She's actually, let me even state, the last fight for Kova here, she fought Montserrat Rendon. Rendon sucks. She's not good. She is stiff on the feet, and even she was busting up Kova here with her terrible big titty punches. But that does show to prove that my theory that if you have big titties and you punch, you do automatically have big titty power, because Zheleznyakova was just bloodied up from the nose. And I honestly thought she lost that fight. She did do some damage, but at the second round and beyond, she was covered in blood. I think Perez will just grapple her way to a decision. Actually, scratch that. I think she's going to TKO her maybe in the second or third round. It is imperative that Perez does not pull a stunt here. If she is just shooting for sloppy takedowns, which I doubt, some might be thinking that because Perez got swept by by Jocelyn Edwards, that Zheleznyakova is going to do something similar. They are two different fighters. I think Edwards is a much better fighter overall, complete fighter than Kova here. And I think that was just more so Perez not establishing just top control and kind of underestimating the ground game of Edwards. So I do think she's going to learn from that. She's going to get on top and bust her up. Next bout, we've got Taylor Lapilus versus Vince Morales. So automatically, Vince Morales is coming in essentially short notice, very short notice bout for both men. He had just fought about a month ago, and he beat former UFC fighter. I wouldn't really call him a vet. He's a vet of the regional scene of Hunter Azure. I think he also was in the Ultimate Fighter, and he got knocked the fuck out. But yeah, that was 2 weeks ago, right? So he is a bit fresh, and now he's fighting way too high of competition for him in Taylor Lapilus. Lapilus, not really known as a finisher, but in his last fight against Cody Stamann, he kind of tried to put a stamp on every round. He started landing very vicious shots on Cody. He got taken down, he got back up. He's kind of notorious for having very good takedown defense and get-ups. Lapilus, too good, too well-rounded of a striker. He's minus 350 here. I think he's more than value at that if you're going to parlay him. But if you do want to take him maybe at the point spread, right, minus 3.5, I think he's going to cover that easily. I think he's going to get at least 30-27s, maybe possibly if Morales, who's a bit of a scrappy boy, does try to push a pace later on, maybe try to get a finish in the third, maybe a 29-28 in there, but I do think he's going to cover that, if not possibly finish Morales to get his first UFC finish here. Morales, he's been looking good in the regionals, but that's in the regionals, man. Let me list off some of the guys he's been beating for him to get back in the UFC, right? Hunter Azure, who is 11-4 now. He's got Luis Guerrero, who was 11-5, some random Mexican dude. He actually did fight Tetsuro Ishihara, former UFC fighter. He actually knocked out featherweight Julian Erosa, and he's 13-12. These guys are not UFC caliber. It's almost like they're just having a soft spot for the guy. Like he's a fun fighter, right? He's been getting a lot of submissions lately. Submission games have gotten a bit better. He's always had good boxing, but here against Lapilus, who's just too well-rounded, I think he's not going to fare well. So I'm going to go with Lapilus by a decision here. Next bout, Ludovic Klein versus Roosevelt Roberts. So Klein, he was supposed to fight and dismantle. I don't want to get into this whole rant about Klein, but why is he fighting fucking shittier competition each time? Like, Roosevelt Roberts, if we're comparing him as a short notice replacement to his original opponent, which is Nicholas Mota, they're about the same, dude. Like, they can just pair up Roosevelt Roberts and Nicholas Mota. He just beat Thiago Moises, man. He just beat a guy who fought quite possibly the next number one contender for the lightweight title in Benoit St Denis and lost up until, he got knocked the fuck out by Dustin. But why are they giving him weird steps in competition? And I don't even know if it's a side step or a back step, but now they're giving him Roosevelt Roberts where he's minus 900, and he should take care of business here. He should finish Roberts. But Roberts, here's the thing about Roberts. The thing about Roberts is Roberts here, who's a plus 550 Roberts is, Roosevelt Roberts, a predator Roosevelt Roberts. He's 6'2" and 73-inch reach. He's a big boy. Klein has dispatched of big dudes before. He's handled them in the past. I think he's going to be too well-rounded for him. But Roberts, he's to me, it's a little too much danger being at short notice where he might pull some bullshit off. He's known to get overhand righted and knocked out. He lost to Kevin Crewman, got submitted. Ludovic Klein right now is in a different level. I would love to say he's on his path to the title, but given the guys he's been given, I don't know if he's just taking whatever he wants or whatever they're giving him because people don't want to fight him. I'm not sure. But given his path right now, he should run through Roberts, no problem. So for me, I will take him to win by knockout in the second round. Maybe that reach from Roberts is going to give him a bit of an issue, but he'll figure it out. So I've got second round knockout for Klein. I want to see a step up in competition for Klein, for real. Like he was an underdog his last fight against Moises, and he essentially made Moises doubt mid-cage if he wants to continue fighting. So yeah, I'll go with Klein knockout, second round. Next bout, Omar C versus Dawu Jung. C minus 500. Comeback on Jung is plus 350. I am considering putting a little sprinkle, maybe a quarter unit on Jung. Jung is still a very good fighter, and for him to get disrespected like this via a, undefeated somewhat prospect in C, like, I understand why he's a big favorite. He should take him down and sub him easily. That's C's game, but he's pretty one-dimensional. He's good at that one dimension, but Dawu Jung has fought better competition. Yes, he has looked kind of bad as of late, but he's still very young, and I think he can actually pull off an upset here if he can maybe defend the takedowns of C, have him strike, and then maybe, drag the fight into deep waters where Jung recently had a fight against, God forbid, Devin Clark, where he was stuffing takedowns. It's just that his fight IQ and just things weren't great. I will pick C to win this one by submission in the first round, but if that first round sub doesn't come, I'm going to be looking at Dawu Jung as a live dog here. Might even pre-bet him just because. Not to say that I don't believe in C. I just want to see a bit more from him before I can say, yeah, he's no problem, minus 500, put him on every single one of your parlays. I would advise not to do that. So I'll go with C by a first round sub. Next bout, we've got Ion Cutelaba versus Ivan Erslan. Cutelaba minus 120, come back on Erslan. He is plus 100. So kind of a battle of very similar guys. They both like to strike. Cutelaba actually has the better overall rounded game because he has that Greco-Roman background. It's, to me, quite frankly, just a very clear Cutelaba fade for me. I watched some of Erslan's tape. I wasn't overly impressed, but I think he has enough with his size. He's like 6'3". He's jacked. He's Croatian. He's a pretty decent boxer. He's very one-dimensional with his striking, but I think his striking defense is pretty good. He's been knocked out before, but I think it's just more so he got caught in that situation. For Ion Cutelaba, I don't know anymore with him. He's still young. He's still 30, but he's been putting on some really weird performances, whether he needs to get a knockout or he just kind of fizzles out throughout the fight. He's not trustworthy to me. And, if Erslan had submissions in his game, and I don't mean submissions via like tap out, via strikes, I mean submissions, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable because I do think he can hurt Cutelaba. I think Erslan, when he goes, he's a pretty fun, ferocious finisher. So it is going to be very much so like a coin flip for me. That is, if Cutelaba wants to implement his grappling here. I think Erslan has some decent takedown defense. I need to see a bit more from him. I didn't see every bit of tape, but I've also seen Erslan kind of shut the bed where he didn't go. That was with much better competition. So I will pick Erslan by first round knockout. I think these two guys might get into an ego fight, and Cutelaba tends to lose those. I think Erslan just has the better defense, but that could bite me in the ass. It's very much 50-50, but I'm going to fade Cutelaba. I will more than likely be placing a bet on Erslan just if he's still plus money. Next bout, we got Ziam versus Matt Frevola in what I like to think is probably the most difficult fight when it comes to the odds and kind of the expectations, right? Frevola, he is plus 100 now. Come back on Ziam, he is minus 120. And initially I thought, yeah, Ziam should run through Frevola. Frevola just coming off of a knockout. Frevola, with longer guys, he has that path to victory being, wrestling them. And Ziam did kind of show terrible takedown defense against Claudio Poyes, the Puto Poyes, Pussy Boy Poyes, which I still thought that he won, but it is what it is. With this fight, Matt Frevola is a dog. He's got the wrestling advantage. He's got good boxing. Ziam, though, taller guy, lankier guy. He's going to have, 3 inches of reach, or 4 inches of reach, 3 inches of height on Frevola. What makes this a bit weary for me is that if Frevola is conscious, he can pull out a decision. He can get it to the ground. He can do some ground and pound. He can land overhand rights. But Ziam, if he maybe catches him, rocks him, changes the story here. But, Ziam's not really much of a finisher, so that's why I am going back and forth on this one a lot, man. So ultimately I landed on Frevola. You know, you go back and you watch the tape, this guy is taking down guys like Violent Bob Ross, who are really big, pretty decent grapplers for that time, back when Frevola wasn't as well rounded. And, you know, likes of Jalen Turner, giant men, you know, taking him down and just controlling him. Frevola hasn't really been wrestling a whole ton recently, and I would expect him to do so here against Ziam. We saw how easily, really, Poyas was able to just lift him up and take him down. But I kind of want nothing to do with this fight at all. I want no action on it for multiple reasons. You know, Ziam can land a perfectly timed knee to maybe hurt Frevola. Just because he hasn't knocked anyone out in the UFC doesn't mean he's not capable of it. I think Ziam has improved tremendously over the years, so much so that I expected him to maybe stuff some takedowns against Poyas, but Poyas kind of made it look easy, but Poyas is kind of a quitter himself, so I'm going to reluctantly take Frevola by a decision, but if anything, it's kind of like a dog or pass on either way. Like at the moment that the line is, if Ziam is a dog, I would go with Ziam. It's a tough one here. It really is, because it's just the expectations. Plus, with the French crowd going nuts, that's an added negative for Frevola. And with decisions going the way that they're going, I don't know. This one might be a tough one. So I will pass on this one. I will go Frevola by decision. But the reason I'm still hesitant is, like, when I keep thinking, well, if they do this, if this fighter X does this, they should win. But I just saw a guy who has great takedowns and great subs and chose to box with a guy who's primarily a boxer in UFC Noche. And it, just because they're capable of doing it doesn't mean that they will. But Frevola, I would assume he would, so I'll go with Frevola at this very moment. I might change my fucking mind. Next about Morgan Charriere. He's going to knock out Gabriel Miranda. You know, Gabriel Miranda, I don't know. He doesn't really belong in the UFC. I think Charriere is going to batter the fucking shit out of him. He's minus 550. Come back on Miranda plus 400. I don't think Miranda has anything for Charriere. Charriere has a wealth of experience. His last fight, he fought a tough guy in that boy Machine Gun Mayerscal, and very close. I think I think if Gabriel Miranda was in that fight, he would have been stopped by either man in like early second round. Gabriel Miranda, you know, good jiu-jitsu. I think Morgan Charriere is going to have him covered there. I think the more dynamic striker will be Charriere. I'm going to pick him to win first round knockout here. So I like Miranda. I thought Miranda put up a good fight against Benoit St Denis, which I will talk about him a little bit later. But ultimately, you know, you get a win over Shane Young, who the best thing he's ever done in the UFC is introduce us to Ludwig Klein, and also the meme of him getting like finished after making that like the Moari face. So yeah, I'll go with Charriere by finish. Next bout, Kevin Jousset versus Brian Battle. Minus 185 for Battle. Come back on Jousset is plus 155. Probably spend a bit more time on this one. Ultimately, my pick will be Battle by decision. The reason for it is I think Battle, for a variety of different reasons, is on like a hot streak right now. You know, he's got a ton of finishes in the UFC. He is the former middleweight tough enough winner. Beat what's his name? Technically, he did beat Tresean Gore to kind of establish that. But the fact that he is also a former middleweight, Jousset is also a former middleweight. Both of these men at middleweight, you know, they're essentially used to fighting those kind of men, same size. Jousset, as of late, hasn't really fought anyone with a longer reach than he has. Brian Battle, similar as well. But with Battle, I think he's just more ferocious as of late. Like, he's just been incredibly, like, confident in himself. In that fight where he beat the shit out of Anglusa, and I'm using that as an example as his ferociousness. I know it was a no contest, but the fact, and I die on this hill, man. I die on this hill. We know that Brian Battle loves his, what does he say? Know what I'm saying? Know what I'm saying? Know what I'm saying? Like those verbal tics. You got a cramp in my foot, so give me a second. those verbal ticks, right? When he was talking shit, cutting that promo on Anglusa after Anglusa quit, and he said he couldn't fight because he couldn't see. Not one single know what I'm saying. None of that. He was just like, he's a pussy. I was like, oh my God, this guy is like talking mad shit on this guy. Like he was like unbelievably confident that he just got robbed from a finish. That made me a bigger believer in Bryan Battle. Like I like Bryan Battle as it is. I've been a fan of his. I've been calling him the mulatto Bisping for a while, but as of late, man, like he has been putting it on guys where he's getting these finishes where he just is ferocious. He puts up numbers on guys. He closes the distance on you. He throws teeps to the body. He's not afraid of getting taken down. His jiu-jitsu's gotten better. But I will say that his chin is a bit suspect to me because when you're getting dropped by midgets and inbred folk, well, I guess there might both be inbred. It doesn't matter. But when you're getting dropped like that, it's a bit concerning. The only thing I don't really worry about Jousset is his chin. I think his output can be a bit low. I think he really loves to feint more than anything. He does have good straight punches. He's got a black belt in judo. He does use it from time to time. I don't know, man. Like Jousset, I've always kind of had like a iffy relationship with him and breaking him down. I think he's a good fighter. I think he does have a good chin. I think he's well-rounded. But sometimes that output to me can be waning, and when I see Bryan Battle just not give a shit and he comes after dudes, I think just that activity, that imposing nature, him having that reach advantage by a few inches, I think 2 inches to be exact, it might just be enough. Jousset does hit hard. Jousset is a very good striker. I do worry about Battle getting hurt and dropped, but if that doesn't happen, I do think that Bryan Battle is going to make this his fight where he will clinch up against the cage with Jousset. Again, they're both essentially middleweights. I don't see either man having a true advantage. I just see with the output, the length of Bryan Battle, the kicks up the middle, just the tenacity of him, and also me kind of being a fucking fan of his. It's a biased pick for me, but I'm going to go with Bryan Battle by a decision here. Next bout, William Gomis versus Joe Anderson Brito. So I've been going back and forth on this one. And I know that sounds weird because it should automatically be Brito wins this one by whatever he wants, right? Because we've seen Gomis kind of struggle in certain times with lower level competition that does not belong in the UFC. You know, he nearly got finished by Francis Marshall, nearly got finished by Jarno Aarons. He, you know, stuff like that is just not a good look for a young kid. He's 27 years old, but the 29-year-old in Brito, he's been fighting much better competition, finishing this competition, kicks the shit out of Jack Shore's leg. He chokes out Jonathan Pierce. You know, he knocks out Weston Wilson, which we all know that boy's on the rise. Lucas Alexander, like he's a finisher. He is strong. He can go for takedowns. He can choke you out at any point. He can pound you out. Hits ridiculously hard, but I do worry about him when it comes to longer strikers that he can get in a bit of trouble here. With Gomis, what I'll say about him, and I've said it about him from the beginning, he's unbelievably athletic. He is still very green despite him being 13-2. You see it in his like fight IQ. He's still a bit green, but with that athleticism, that natural talent, that length, he is 6 foot tall, 73-inch reach. He throws kicks. He moves well. He trains out of MMA Factory, essentially like Nasruddin Imavov. He's very similar to the way that they fight, just not really known as a finisher for Gomis. The biggest threat that Gomis will provide Brito is the threat of losing a decision, where Gomis does enough to, you know, avoid the barrage of Brito, avoid the takedowns of Brito. And if Brito maybe wins the first round and tires himself out, Gomis can maybe win the last two, especially being in France. There's a lot of danger in betting Brito. I ultimately will pick him to win because if Brito puts Gomis in any danger in the sense of if he takes his back, and I'm telling you, when you go look in that third round for the Francis Marshall fight, right, the third round with Jarno Aarons, he's getting put in these submissions, and yes, he is defending and surviving, but if he gets in those submissions against Brito, he's not going to have a chance to survive. He will be put out. He won't even have a chance to tap out. So Brito's a strong man. I do expect Brito to, you know, get on the legs, take him down, take his back, and choke him out by 2 rounds. I will pick him by submission in the second. But I am considering, you know, the fail-safe of maybe William Gomis by a decision, or maybe just William Gomis who's plus 215 money line, just taking a bit of a shot on him, which I might do that. I might track that as well. Just Brito, I go back and I see his fights against like longer lankier dudes, and if he's not knocking them out or finishing them, he does have a bit of struggle with them. Like Jonathan Pierce, yes, he's a grappler, but he had a bit of struggle with him. Primary example, Bill Algeo. Bill Algeo stuffed the takedowns. He was keeping the distance. Then eventually he got on top of Brito, and that was a bit of an embarrassing fight for Brito, who thought he was going to steamroll this kid, and he just wasn't able to. If he's thinking he's going to steamroll Gomis, and he's not able to get a hold of the legs because this motherfucker is just so athletic, he'll jump over Brito or some shit, that worries me. So as much as I want to say, like, yeah, Brito on all the parlays, I would exclude him. I would probably just sit back and wait. You might even go, in my eyes, Gomis decision, Brito submission. Like that double header, see if you can maybe cash one of those. So that way, if, Gomis does fucking pull it out of his ass by just moving around the cage, kicking him, defending takedowns, and avoiding any serious shots from Brito, you'd be covered. Or if Brito actually does get it to the ground, he's not going to pound them out. He's going to go for that sub. So I'll go officially Brito by submission, but it is not a very confident pick. Next, about Brendan Allen versus Imavov here, Nasruddin Imavov. And currently Imavov minus 240. I think it's a little wild, but Brendan Allen plus 195. I think the fact that Brendan Allen went nearly life and death with Chris Curtis really did hurt his chances here with the money line. Ultimately, I do have Imavov to win because he is just so clean of a striker in a 3-round fight. There's a couple different things that I'm leaning Imavov on is that, he's been 5-round multiple times. I think he's fought better competition. Yes, he's not necessarily been finishing every single one or beating every single one, but, he had a much more competitive fight with the former champion in Sean Strickland as opposed to Sean Strickland knocking out Brendan Allen, which is like... Shit's so fucking funny to me, man. Is that the last person that Strickland knocked out? Let me make sure. Let's go back here. Like, where is he? Oh, here we go. Who has Sean Strickland knocked out since? That quitter doesn't count. Yeah, Busmagomedov is the last person, so he's good now. But Brendan Allen before that was the real one. So yeah, with Brendan Allen's chin and his ability to get kind of stung and wobbled and Bambi-legged, a guy like Nasruddin, the Russian sniper, I think he's going to have a lot of success with that. The problem is you start wondering, like, well, what if Brendan Allen takes it to the ground? He's very good at submissions, rear naked chokes, and so on and so forth. But with Brendan Allen, although he does have wrestling, he's not really known to get it to the ground and then get the submission. He's known to hurt guys on the feet and then go for the sub. Usually the rear naked choke, which one of the best rear naked chokes, he goes for the sub first and then he gets the hooks in, which is great. He's very successful at it. But man, I see him getting hurt by Chris Curtis still. Like, he didn't learn his lesson there. He's still striking with him. He did have success. You do see the evolution of his striking, Brendan Allen's striking's always been pretty solid. His Muay Thai's always been good, but now he's more confident in it that he doesn't necessarily need it. Or how should I say? He doesn't need to just strictly grapple with guys. He can stand with you for a bit, hurt you, and then get it to the ground. He doesn't feel that, like, oh my God, my time's running out. I have to go for a takedown. I think the reason for it is because I think he does gas out grappling way too much, especially with failed takedowns. So that's my guess. Because we saw that Chris Curtis fight, he was shooting for really bad takedowns after he'd kind of gotten exhausted in a 5-round fight. But so this is not a 5-round fight. Ultimately, I do see Nasruddin landing something. I think he's going to be too quick for Allen. Now, is there a chance Allen can hurt him and take him down and choke him out? Absolutely. But with the speed, with the stage that Nasruddin is in, that he's fighting in France and Paris, he is going to pick his shots, and I think he will hurt Brendan Allen to the point that he will either finish him, knock him out cold, or TKO him. So for me, I'm going to go 2nd round TKO for Nasruddin Imavov. And then finally, the main event at lightweight, Renato Moicano, Money Moicano versus God of War Benoit St Denis. Odds have it in favor of Benoit St Denis is minus 270. Come back on Moicano plus 220. I'm a Moicano guy here. All right, I think... How much time do I have? Let me 1 second. How long have I been recording? For 30 minutes. All right, I'll go for a few minutes here. I've said it from the beginning. I like Benoit St Denis. I like him a lot. I think that he has a toughness to him that we've seen with the Zaleski fight. This raw power, this aggression that he pushes forward. He wants to be like Khabib, at least style wise. That's how I assess it. But he is very limited in what he can do sometimes. And it really is dictated on his opponents tiring out and his opponents not finding that kill shot on him. He's a tough dude. He's not going to want to quit here. And is he the rightful favorite? I guess if you look in the grand scheme of things, his last fight, he lost to the former number one contender in Dustin Poirier, and he got knocked out. And then you can say there was staph involved there, staph infection. The thing with that is that when Gabriel Miranda's landing clean punches on you and wobbling you, that ain't fucking good. When, yes, you made him quit in Moises, and he's kind of known to do that, but when he's landing good shots on you and hurting you, and you resort to going for deep diving, deep sea fucking fishing for dick and going for the legs, that's a bad sign. When you're getting put in guillotines by Dustin Poirier multiple times, it shows me that I need to see more evolution from Benoit St Denis, and I've just not been seeing it. I do like his head kicks, his body kicks, that left lead body kick, the high kick that he knocked out Frevola with, but this is a different level of competition than Moicano. Moicano is going to be able to match him in the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu, the striking. I think he's a better striker. I think he's got better head movement. Yes, his chin isn't going to be as good as Benoit St Denis. Moicano has been dropped recently, a couple of occasions where he got hurt pretty damn bad by Jalen Turner, but we see that he's battle-tested. We see that he got hurt bad by Drew Dober, but Drew Dober, battle-tested vet. These guys are top guys. They're tough dudes. And with Moicano, if Benoit gets rocked or stung and he deep dives again for that dick and he gets caught in a guillotine, I think Moicano's going to be able to finish it. Moicano can also offensively wrestle. I don't think he's going to be worried about getting taken down by Benoit St Denis. I do worry, though, with Benoit. In that first round, he is very dangerous. He's very fast with those kicks, but he's very robotic with the punches. So with Moicano, training at ATTs, training with very good wrestlers like Gamrot. Well, after his last fight, he's Scamrot. But I think he's going to be well prepared for this fight. I think at plus 220, it's just so hard not to go with him. Like, the dude wants his money. He's going to come get his money. For Benoit, again, I've been a fan of his, but it's weird for me as a guy who was rooting for him early. I'm like, man, just let's see what he can do. But then I kept hearing like, oh, this guy's so good at this. He's going to do that. He's going to fucking pose a problem to Makhachev. I got to take a step back and be realistic. I'm like, man, maybe y'all dick riders are dick riding a little too hard, and I was just dick riding a little bit. So I don't know if that kind of soured me, like the psychological shit behind that, where am I fading Benoit St Denis just out of spite? I don't think so. I really don't. I do see those holes. I've been seeing them from the beginning. And that's another thing that I kind of try to be very weary of. Sometimes I'm wrong with the prediction, right? I say, hey, I think this is going to happen. Benoit doesn't move his head. He gets hurt. But it doesn't happen in this fight. But it doesn't mean that I'm wrong. It doesn't mean that I am wrong in my assessment of the fighter. It's just that the fighter didn't take advantage of it. With Moicano, knowing what, again, battle-tested Moicano, a guy that will get dropped and keep moving forward, he knows how to win. I think he's going to actually get on top of Benoit at a certain point and pound him out, or maybe even club and sub. So my official prediction will be Moicano. I say second round submission or second round TKO. The reason for it, I do think that Moicano will be landing and really hurting Benoit St Denis at a certain point. Early on, I think it's going to be clinch after clinch, but eventually I think Moicano's going to be landing these shots because his boxing is good. He has heavy hands. And then eventually Moicano will get a takedown on him, get on top of him and start raining punches. Whether he gets TKO'd by the ref, maybe the boos will start cheering, but there's always that possibility of that rear naked choke from Moicano, who's a top level BJJ guy. So I will go Moicano second round sub, or TKO that is. But yeah, it's going to be a fun fight. I think these start early, so it's going to be awesome just to wake up. Me being, somewhat French via my whatever 20. How did Izzy put it? Like my 23 and me, my whatever the fuck he called it. But I want to root for the French guys. But last time I rooted for the guys that were part of my genetic gene pool, the Mexicans, they fucking shit the bed. But I do think there's going to be a lot of success here from the Frenchies, particularly I'm thinking Taylor Lapilus and also what's that dude's name? Morgan Charriere. I'm considering making a really bad degenerate bet, like a pretty bad degenerate bet on those two, but because I don't see the way that they lose. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below, what your bets are, what your thoughts are on this France card. But yeah, Johnny TIgerbomb MMA. I will see you next week.